Who are the players on the hot seat, the warm seat, and the cold seat for the Cats this coming season? We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, August 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MoneyMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. So, Cats fans, a little bit one more time of housekeeping notes that in the month of August, we will be doing 2 to 4 episodes a week. This last week was 2. This week happens to be 4. And just in case you guys are wondering, the rotation of episodes, we will do mostly Wednesdays, Fridays, sometimes a Monday, sometimes a Thursday. It's a little bit up and down based on the off-season content here. But let's go right into our topic for today. But before we do, we have to introduce our guest on today's show. It is Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Nick Fairbanks is back right off the IR. Nick, welcome back to Locked On Panthers.
Yeah, I kind of was feeling like the Panthers defense to start the season wasn't feeling the best last week. So I appreciate you, putting me in the bench, or not the bench, but up in the seats to watch, and did a great job last week. So let's get going.
Thank you so much, my friend. And I want to get right into a very important topic that was spoken about yesterday on the news front, as far as regarding the Florida Panthers. And let's talk about first Spencer Knight.
Mm-hmm.
We know that he went into the players assistance program in the middle of last season, and now there was this news about him being part of the shoulder check showcase out in Stamford, Connecticut, his home state, him being from Darien, Connecticut. And this showcase was all about honoring a guy, Hayden Thorson, a 15-year-old goaltender who unfortunately committed suicide last spring. And with Spencer Knight being part of the Players Assistance Program and going in at such a young age, at 21 years old, to deal with whatever he was dealing with, this isn't to speculate on what he was going through, but the fact that he's taking that step after coming out the Players Assistance Program to be part of something communal in his home state as well, it just really speaks volumes about who he is and probably the lessons that he's learned along the way, that he probably had so much help himself from going through what he went through that he wants to pay it forward to someone else and their family. And the Thorson family was the one who organized this. And Nick, he wasn't the only one who was part of this showcase. There's the likes of Chris Kreider, Jonathan Quick, who is another Connecticut native, Trevor Zegras, Kevin Shattenkirk, Mika Zibanejad, and Adam Fox. So those are the guys who were part of the showcase up in Stamford. I want to get your thoughts on knowing that Spencer Knight was a part of that showcase just this past week.
So besides Spencer, it's really telling and really heartfelt to see that all these players that you just named were able to make the trip up to Connecticut and be a part of something that's bigger than us. And it's something that I don't know is being treated as serious or as something that a lot of people see every day. And it just goes to show that it is a serious problem. I mean, it's not every day you hear about a 15-year-old kid, unfortunately, deciding to end his own life. But it's good to see that these players are a part of that and want to give back. About Spencer, we can speculate all we want. We don't know why he went into the program, and part of me wants it to stay that way.
Same
Um,
here.
but for him to go there and to be a part of it, because he's a goalie and because the unfortunate incident that happened to the kid, he was a goalie as well. So I almost wonder if it's a positional thing as well. Like, this is me being, an advocate. Same thing with Jonathan Quick. For this position, saying that we're here for you and we're here for, people that are dealing with this, but also people who are dealing with mental health issues in general.
No doubt. And it just goes to show that, I mean, and listen, the goaltending position, a lot of it is the mental side of the game too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're having family issues at home, and it's really hard to track pucks when you're trying to read someone trying to shoot a one timer and you're one step late and it's behind the net and all. So it really, things have to go right off the ice in order for it to produce well on the ice as well. And I'm hoping that that's the same for Spencer Knight. And also I want to um, give our thoughts to the Thorson family as well, that they're still dealing with this loss at such a young age, that we wish that he got the help that he needed. And if even if he even if he did um, even if he did get the help that he did have or need, that I hope that he is that the suffering for him is in fact over, as far as that, and that he isn't no longer in pain. But it's funny because I spoke with Doug Plagans. We were having our rock and roll segment with just talking about seeing Disturbed this weekend, and the lead singer of Disturbed, David Draymond, he spoke about how in February that he was suicidal as well. And there is a song by Disturbed called "The Light," and the lyrics in that song say, "Sometimes darkness can show you the light." And in that song, everyone had their phones out and put their lights on their phones, and you see those happen so many times in sports with moments of like maybe like stand up to cancer in baseball, for example, and all. And I just hope that if anyone out there is struggling, that you can reach out to either Nick or I at Panther fans, and chat with us about that as well. And the hotline for it is 988. That's the suicide awareness hotline for if anyone is dealing with any type of mental health issues as well. But Nick, let's transition over to. Do you have one more thought, actually?
I just said that I want everybody to take a step back when it comes to things like this because, as you were saying before, that somebody could be playing a hockey game and they could be completely distracted and not playing up to their best, and understanding that when they fail, they don't feel like they're failing themselves. They feel like they're failing everybody. So let's, as fans, take a step back. These guys are humans. I mean, yeah. Just for example, the Panthers didn't win the cup, and we had the whole Radko Gudas thing with the Carolina Hurricanes fan. Sports are serious, but they're not that serious. So let's come together. Let's be one, and let's treat each other with, integrity and fairness.
Yeah, even though I work in sports for a living, at the end of the day, this is entertainment at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it
100%.
comes down to. And I can accept that even though I work in this industry as well. But let's transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about which Panthers are on the hot, warm, and cold seat going into the 2023-24 season. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you could get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on the spread, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com/lockedon. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, August 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It's another edition of Fairbanks Friday. And Nick, there was an article out from the Hockey News discussing the hot, warm, and cold seat. And some of you might be listening to the hearing where it's from, the Hockey News, and you might think it was written by the likes of the Dworks or even the Aaron Browns, but it was actually written by a national writer who looks throughout the whole National Hockey League. I'm looking up the writer right now, Adam Proteau. So he did it for every single team. And actually, David Dork actually wrote an article reacting to that too. So the following are the hot, warm, and cold seats. Hot is Sergei Bobrovsky. Warm is Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Cold is Alexander Barkov. So let's talk about these one by one. Bob, I'm not sure if it's necessarily hot. For him, I would think it would be more warm. And I would say on the hot, it would be closer to hot because knowing about what the contract terms coming up next season is, it won't be a full no move clause. It'll become a modified no trade clause. At the same time, if he plays horribly, you ask yourself what team is going to trade for that contract. But at the same time, if he plays well, you give yourself an opportunity to want to keep him around as well. And every single time that a player, whether it's been Chris Drieger or Spencer Knight, even Alex Lyon, has knocked on the door, Sergei Bobrovsky has found a way to steal that job back every single time. So I'm not sure if it's necessarily hot, but I could see it as warm.
So with Sergei, I think it's been hot since he signed that 7-year deal of $70 million. Let's be honest. And the fact is that he hasn't lived up to expectations. Last year was probably, the last 2 years are probably his best years as a Panther, just because he was more consistent. But also, he was the main reason why, one of two amazing reasons why they made it the Stanley Cup final this last season. But yeah, as you were saying, I don't really consider him to be on the hot seat. It is what it is right now. He's either going to be on a hot seat or he's not going to be on a seat on the Panthers bench or even in the crease, next season or come next off season. So I think that was kind of an easy choice. If I were to put somebody on the hot seat, and this is just going into knowledge of the organization, it'd be Gregory Denisenko. This is his last chance, I think. They proved that they believe in him. That's why they gave him a 1-year, one-way deal. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't get it done, that's going to be it for him in Florida.
Yeah, I could see how, he was drafted in 2017. It's been a while since he's been with the organization. Put up or shut up time for him for sure. Next one, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I'm not sure if his seat is warm to begin with. I can get why. A really bad season in Vancouver. The contract was aging very poorly even before he even got traded to Vancouver from Arizona, which Arizona still is gonna pay part of that contract, even though he's bought out from Vancouver. 1 year, 2.25. Not gonna play the biggest of roles when Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour come back. So I don't think his seat is necessarily warm because he's going to be asked to do a lot in the beginning, and it's out of necessity. It's not. It's basically okay. This is what we got. We don't want to put you in first pair minutes, but looks like that because of your experience. Okay, you're gonna have to put him out there as the top pair as well. So I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if he's going to be one that's going to go on waivers when when Ekblad and Montour do come back. I'm not sure if it's going to be him. I think it's more likely Kulikov than anything, or Mike Riley, one of those two. So, but or maybe they find a way to send Carlson back down to Charlotte, something like that. So that's another player that for the Panthers. But I think a player that would be on the warm seat, if he has another scoring drought, even though he's a 30-goal scorer, I could see Sam Reinhart being on that warm seat. He's going the last year of his contract too, as well. Do you see a situation where Oliver Ekman-Larsson is here for more than a year? I definitely don't, honestly.
So you took my pick. I was definitely going to pick Sam Reinhart just because there's a lot of smoke around him, going into the trade deadline and then also in the offseason because the Panthers do need to clear some cap. And, if he's not willing to sign for a reasonable deal, then he'd probably be the likely one to go. But, no, I don't expect Ekman-Larsson to be here more than a year unless he has some kind of resurgence. I can see Zito extending him maybe one more year after that. But, again, this is just a stopgap. This is for them to get healthy and to look into the future to see what else that they could add on whether this will be a playoff team again or maybe they have to retool into the next offseason. But since you took Sam Reinhart, I'm going to take Sam Bennett. The guy was a force during the playoffs. He played through injuries and everything, but that's just it. He's been injured way too often. The Panthers have had to rely on a lot of depth players, and this season almost exposed them. It's just fortunate that they had people who were playing wing go back to playing center to help them out. But at this point in time, with the way the team is going to start with the injured defenseman, they need everybody in the top six to be healthy and ready to go. So that's who I'm going to say. If he can't stay healthy, I don't want to, but I could definitely see him possibly being put on the block.
And let's not forget the immediate impact when Sam Bennett did come back in the lineup. And there was a time when both Barkov and Bennett were out at the same time, and you're like, "Oh Lord!" Even though you have Etu going back to center as well, and Lundell playing in the middle six of those lines as well, it's like, oh man, this is just you're just trying to hold the fort for a little bit and just hang on to dear life as well. And you don't want to be in that situation again. That's for sure. And I don't think we can disagree on who is on the cold seat. They wrote Barkov, but I could also put Matthew Tkachuk as well. Both of them have 7 years left. Tkachuk is going to be in the record books when it's all said and done 7 years from now. I'm really excited to see where we talk about Matthew Tkachuk even decades from now. Alexander Barkov has the no move clause as well, so no reason to believe that of those guys. But I will give one other person on the cold seat, and it's not a player. It's actually General Manager Bill Zito, who is on the cold seat. And some people might think, but he traded so much draft capital. The farm is depleted. I mean, you made the playoffs 3 years, every single year that he's been the general manager, and going back to the whole, sometimes the best move to make is to not make any, and he did that this trade deadline. And again, he's been able to go super aggressive, and he's been able to go super conservative as well in both situations, which is why I believe that he is on the cold seat. I mean, and how many times did Dale Talon make the playoffs? And during his time with the Florida Panthers, yeah, I know he had a rebuild to conduct, but still, when you make it twice in 10 years, I like to say that Bill Zito will last a long time in Florida.
He will, and it just goes to show. And one thing I kind of want you to think about, and I want our listeners to think about too, is I feel like every single offseason or maybe during the season, he's made a move that has been the pinnacle or what has been the identity of this team. Think about it. We put together the President Trophy winning team, traded the farm for basically everybody they could to go for a deep run. Didn't work out. That summer you trade for Matthew Tkachuk. Then you go to the next trade deadline. You're like, hey, listen, I like my team. I like everybody. We believe in them. Then they go to the Stanley Cup final. Everything he has done is always like it it's making the team better no matter what. I know that's going to not make sense in a way that we depleted the farm and everything, but every step has kind of put the Panthers in a better position to win or to believe in themselves, because when does that happen to them? I mean, you go from trading for Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart in that one off season. You had the President's Trophy winning season where trade for everybody and trade all your farm, and then you trade for Tkachuk and then you do nothing. Like, this game is so crazy. It's so lucky, and there's so many bounces that you don't know what's going to happen. So who knows? Maybe he'll make another move this season that will take them even farther, or maybe it'll be next season, off season. But we got to trust in Zito, guys. He's done nothing to me that has permanently damaged the Florida Panthers.
I hope that during the trade deadline next year that they're not on the bubble, so that we're not asking the question, should they buy, should they sell? Because I don't want to go through that again. I really don't.
We already know what he's going to do.
It
depends on the defense. If the defense is still hurt or guys are not coming back, he's going to look at the defenseman. If we're scoring goals like how we were last season, don't touch it. Just make sure Bob is protected. Maybe get a backup if Stolarz isn't up to par, or if Knight is not up on the roster. That might be something to look at. But yeah, I mean, Zito should not be. I don't think Paul Maurice should be at all, even though the amount of grief he got during the season last year up until the playoffs. And I can't think of anybody else who would be like technically on the cold seat or on a seat right now. If anything, I want to put my boy Anton Lundell up there because he showed up during the playoffs, and this year he's playing for a contract, and I expect big things from him. So that I'll add him to that list.
Yeah, and he will get a bridge deal. It's just when. We just need to know when. That's the thing. But that's it for our hot, warm, and cold seat for this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We're going to transition to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss how do we think the penalty kill is going to look like for the Florida Panthers. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on this Friday, August 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Once again with Nick Fairbanks. And honestly, guys, I think you guys need to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because going into the transition to the next segment, if you guys listen to this on audio, it doesn't do it justice what the facial expressions that Nick and I had into transitioning into segment number 3, talking about the penalty kill, because the look on our faces was not pretty as far as even introducing what the Panthers penalty kill will look like. So if you want to see our pretty faces, first of all, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. So
hold on to your butts right now.
Yes, please hold on to your butts, because I was for the listeners, Nick and I were discussing this pre-recording, that, and I'm going to say this again on the actual recording. It took me a good 30 minutes to actually put something together, because you're just scratching your head and you're not liking what you see. And yes, once again, the injuries to the blue line have a lot to do with it. But if I were to put an opening night penalty kill unit, and yes, this is going to be dependent on who goes to the box. So let's just assume that none of these guys are the ones that are going to the penalty box. But we could expect from time to time that this will be shuffled. But Barkov, Lundell, as far as the forwards, those are going to be the top guys who are going to be on the PK as far as the forwards. But there won't be Aaron Ekblad to start the season. Forsling, so by default, Forsling's going to be there. And I was stuck between two guys, but between Dmitry Kulikov and Niko Mikkola on the first pair on the PK. And I think I'm going to slightly put Niko Mikkola there. He did play a lot of minutes on the PK in St. Louis last year before being traded to the New York Rangers. Dmitry Kulikov logged a lot of PK minutes because he was the veteran on a tanking Anaheim Ducks team that was going after Connor Bedard. So that you put two and two together and like, okay, you can't be surprised. He's an elder statesman on that team right before he was traded to Pittsburgh. And honestly, man, part of me wants to put Josh Mahura there to give him a little bit of a chance to
Yeah.
to give him an increased role as well, because we didn't have a lot of bad things to say about Josh Mahura until the Stanley Cup final, really, where he was exposed. But
Yeah.
there's a little part of me that thinks that this could be a really big chance of Josh Mahura to go on the first PK unit. But for now, I think I'm going to go with Nico Mikkola on that top one. Etu Luostarinen needs a new partner. There's no Eric Stahl anymore there for the Panthers. So I think Sam Reinhart is going to bump up a spot. So it's going to be him and Etu Luostarinen, and I think it's going to be Dmitry Kulikov and Josh Mahura on that second unit for the PK. And then forwards for third, Sam Bennett is going to be a guy that's going to be involved there as well. And looking at average time on ice numbers, the likes of Kachuk and Lomberg only had like 20 something seconds. So that if you're going to put like a six forward, one of those two is going to be one of the guys as far as the forwards. And then you fill out the rest of the D on the third. So how do you think the penalty kill is going to look, as ugly as it might look on paper?
So I'm kind of a little bit right now. I kind of want to take Barkov off of the PK, even though he's a defensive juggernaut and he plays a great two-way game. I kind of want him to get more rest, but I understand. So, yeah, I would put him and Lundell together. However, let's say we need to give him a break. I'm going to bump up newly acquired Panther, Evan Rodriguez, up there. He's a good two-way player. He's quick. So I'd put him up there with Lundell as well. If not, I'm going to put him on the second pairing, and I am actually going to put him with E2 on there. I think that would be a deadly combination. As far as the defense goes, I really don't have any. I think it's going to be Ekman Larson and Forsling.
Oh, really?
And that, yeah, I think it's going to be Ekman Larson and Forsling. I don't think that Paul Maurice is going to want to switch up his D pairs too much. I mean, you had Mahura and Gudas like all last season, which I think was fantastic until the Stanley Cup final. And then I think you're going to have Kulikov and Mikkola. I think those are going to be your two. And then if there needs to be a third pairing, I'm probably going to go with man, you're getting real slim pickings here, and this is what's scaring me a little bit is, yeah, who do you have? Who are you going to put there?
Riley, Mike Riley.
Riley. Yeah,
Lucas
Kinnunen, Carlson, Kierstead, Mike Benning if he makes it. Yeah, it's not a very good look right now. I mean, you're either big and old or you're big and slow. Forsling's probably the best defenseman out of all of them right now, and I really don't want him on the PK anymore. To be honest, I think his size, he'll get overmatched. So I need Aaron Ekblad to heal up really quick, as much as I'd like to rag on him. And I also want Brandon Macho to be back opening night, because the way that he's looking right now, it's looking like he might be ready in October.
Yeah, there was actually a second video to come out to surface of Brandon Montour doing some rehab work. So It's very encouraging. And you see him doing like the shoulder exercises too. And honestly, what are the chances that he doesn't play a single preseason game and he just plays opening night?
I'm okay with that. Like with how much he played during the playoffs, like in overtimes and stuff like that, let him go. He'll catch up real quick.
So, and let's not forget the season isn't going to be over in October, even if you go out, even if he plays poorly. That's where you got to really get your legs going as well for him. But yeah, even though Brandon Montour didn't play the biggest role in BK, even if he didn't have this torn labrum, you were going to expect him to take that big step for the Panthers there, on when they're down a man as well. And just to look at the look of this, it's not. Listen, we're Panther fans, but we can't be homers here for sure. we got to be honest about how this looks. And for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, he didn't, even in Vancouver, he wasn't really playing a big role on the PK. He only averaged like 1.2 minutes on the PK last year. So it just goes to show that how non-reliable he was on his own end of how what was mostly his role to be an offensive defenseman for the Vancouver Canucks and even the Arizona Coyotes. So the Panthers, as far as his role, might be more on the offensive. We spoke last week. He's likely going to be the quarterback on the power play for the Cats as well. So something to think about as well. But if you guys want to tell us who you think will be on the PK on the as far as forwards and defense, if you want to comment on the YouTube, if you want to at us at Monoman12 at Prudential 0, make sure to add us there and let's have a discussion about it. Is we are 62 days away from opening night when this episode drops. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell people once again where they can follow you online.
Armando, thank you for having me on, and thank you for having me on for the first segment to talk about mental health and mental health awareness. It's one of the most important things, not only to me, but I know it is to you. So again, thank you for having me on to talk about that. And everybody, you guys can follow me on the X at Prudential 0, because that's what Elon Musk wants to call it now. And then you guys at Prudential 0, and then you guys can follow me on Threads at Bure1096.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you so much once again. Thank you for what you said at the end, and I will see you next week, my friend.
I'll see you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.